The nation's long web of interstates provided the perfect hunting ground for a depraved predator. He preyed on hitchhikers wandering the roads. He held them captive, then tortured and raped them. When that didn't satisfy his warped cravings, he killed instead.
Across the nation, a serial rapist targeted unsuspecting women. It was only a matter of time till his dark urges raged out of control and led him to murder. He followed a path so random, it was impossible to trace, and all that tied him to his crimes were his access to the highways and a bizarre sexual fetish. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. When investigators believed the suspect had committed dozens of murders, the FBI was determined to put the brakes on his nationwide rampage.
February 5th, 1990. On a road in Houston, Texas, 18-year-old Nicole Tuttle desperately tried to flag down passing motorists. Someone finally stopped for the bruised and bleeding woman.
Oh my God. There's a guy trying to kill me.
The driver took her to the closest phone to call police.
Please help.
At the Houston police station, Nicole told officers that she had been kidnapped and assaulted, but she'd managed to escape.
I have to get out.
Her ordeal began in California 1 week earlier. On January 29th, she hitched a ride from a trucker at a rest stop. He said his name was Dusty and that he was headed east through Arizona. After a few hours on the road, she fell asleep in the back compartment of his truck. It seemed that was exactly what he was waiting for. He climbed in back and overpowered her. Before she was fully awake, he chained her to the walls and gagged her with a horse bit. The trucker whipped her and pierced her with pins and fishhooks. He also raped and sodomized her. Nicole told police that she was chained inside the cab for 6 days. Her ordeal didn't end there. Inside his Houston apartment, the trucker allowed her to bathe, then chained her to the bed and raped her again. She watched helplessly as he approached her with a straight razor. He pressed the blade close to her scalp and began to slice off her hair. After 3 hours, he forced her back into the truck. This time, he failed to bind her. When they stopped at a brewery, he left her alone as he walked inside to sign for his new freight.
Do you know how many days that you were in the truck?
Nicole knew this might be her only chance.
Where did you...
She ran for it, still wearing a dog leash around her neck.
I needed to go to California.
Houston police stopped a trucker in the area whose rig fit Nicole's description.
Hey, Nick.
She said he was not the man who attacked her. A background check revealed no outstanding warrants or convictions, so police released the trucker. Nicole told the officers to stop searching. She was too frightened to testify against her attacker. She just wanted to go home to California. On February 5th, the same day that Nicole escaped, another young woman was on the highway thumbing for rides. Just 15 miles away in Pasadena, Texas, 14-year-old Regina K. Walters was running away with her new boyfriend. Her parents were divorced, and Regina usually stayed with her father in Houston. She'd been visiting her mother for a few days when she fled and began hitchhiking. Whether she was following the lead of her new teenage boyfriend or just testing her independence, a trucker soon stopped for the pretty young girl. Regina's mother, Carolyn Walters, was a single mom who worked long hours as a department store clerk. When she came home from work, she was surprised to find her daughter was not home.
Regina?
Her daughter did not answer.
Regina?
Carolyn found no notes and saw no other signs that her daughter had been back to the house. She checked the answering machine, but Regina had left no messages. Carolyn called her daughter's friends and Regina's father in Houston.
Hello, Chris.
No one had heard from the girl.
Is Regina there?
The distraught mother reported her daughter as a missing person to Pasadena, Texas police.
I'm Detective Jackson. How are you?
She spoke with a detective from the juvenile section, providing the officer with Regina's description. Her 14-year-old daughter was about 5 feet tall, weighed 95 pounds, and had long, curly brown hair. The detective asked Carolyn what steps she had taken so far to find her.
Has anyone heard from her?
Carolyn had posted missing persons flyers, but no one had yet responded. The worried mother hadn't heard from her daughter since they argued 2 nights before. At 9:30 that night, Regina told her mother she was going to visit a friend.
I just think you ought to stay home tonight.
When Carolyn objected, the girl insisted she would be right back.
No, it's not. Well, I want... Regina, what?
Against her better judgment, Carolyn relented, trusting that Regina would call if she stayed out later.
But you can go ahead.
Though the young teen had a history of running away, she always returned on her own.
Anybody about her parents or where she is right now?
Her mother believed this time was different.
Does she have a boyfriend?
Pasadena, Texas police detective Suzanne Jackson of the Juvenile Division was assigned the case. She understood Carolyn's concern.
Several days passed, and Regina would normally call her mom when she would leave home and let her mother know that she was okay and that she was just out. She would be back when she was ready to come home, and she had not done that.
You can just set those up there.
Carolyn posted more flyers at the convenience store close to her house. She held out hope that her daughter was unharmed. Maybe she was simply staying with a friend. Along with Regina's photo and description, Carolyn offered a reward for information on her daughter's whereabouts. "5 days after Regina's disappearance, Carolyn received a phone call.
You know someone who's been with my daughter?
The caller had seen Regina talking to 2 young men on the evening she left her mother's house.
Okay.
The person only knew the men as Billy and Ricky,
Bye-bye now.
but she remembered that Billy had a girlfriend with a peculiar name of Urena. Carolyn immediately called police.
Speak to Detective Jackson, please.
The following day, a second caller gave Carolyn the address of an apartment where he had seen Regina at a party 2 days before.
Here it is.
When police arrived, no one answered.
Okay.
The manager told them the apartment was rented to a man named Billy Wayne Gibbs. The next morning, the detective told her colleagues about the case. She mentioned she was looking for Gibbs in connection with Regina's disappearance. She was also looking for 2 others, a woman named Urena and a man named Ricky. She didn't know their last names. To her surprise, the officers did. Billy Wayne Gibbs had a girlfriend named Urena Sweet and a friend named Ricky Lee Jones. The 3 were wanted in connection with an auto theft. Units were dispatched to Gibbs' apartment to wait for his return. Officers patrolled the nearby road. After several hours of surveillance, they picked up 17-year-old Gibbs and his girlfriend Urena near his apartment. Police handcuffed the young couple and brought them to the station for questioning. The third suspect, Ricky Lee Jones, was still at large. The arresting officer asked Gibbs if he had seen Regina or Ricky Lee Jones. Gibbs said he had spoken to them 4 days ago, but not since. He told police that Ricky and Regina were in love and planned to run away to Mexico, where Ricky had relatives. The detectives suspected that 18-year-old Jones had another reason for leaving town. If he were caught with Regina, he could be charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
Regina was 14, and they obviously were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. When they saw the flyers that the mother had left out with reward on her location, they decided it would be best to leave the area so they wouldn't be caught. And that's when they decided to leave the area, hitchhike to Mexico.
The detective learned that Ricky Lee Jones was already on probation for theft. Fleeing jurisdiction was a parole violation. She issued a warrant for his arrest. She also fed Regina's description into the NCIC, the National Crime Information Center, a database listing both victims and criminals nationwide. If Regina were located by any police department in the country, Pasadena, Texas police would be notified. Until then, with no known address or vehicle, it would be difficult to find the pair. 15 miles away, Houston police interviewed Jerry Walters, Regina's divorced father. He told them he had received a disturbing call on his unlisted home number on the evening of March 17th. The conversation was brief, and Walters did not recognize the caller's voice. The man asked, "Are you Regina's father?" When Walters replied yes, the man told him he knew where to find Regina. He said she was in a loft of a barn, and that there had been some changes. He had cut the girl's hair. Regina's father asked if she was dead or alive. The caller hung up without answering. Detective Jackson asked Southwestern Bell to trace the call. The company told her it would take several days. Police would simply have to wait. Aside from the phone records, the trail of the missing 14-year-old and her boyfriend was stone cold. In March of 1990, Pasadena, Texas police detective Suzanne Jackson continued her search for 14-year-old Regina K. Walters. The girl hadn't been seen since early February, when she left a friend's house with her 18-year-old boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones. The detective's only lead was an anonymous phone call made to Regina's father on March 17th. The call had yet to be traced. On the same night Regina's father received his call in Houston, her mother in Pasadena, Texas, also got a call.
Hello?
She recorded the conversation as police had advised.
Yeah.
An unknown man told Carolyn to meet him at 6:30 the next morning at the local convenience store. He had something to tell her about Regina, and he wanted to say it in person. Without giving his name or description, he hung up. Carolyn called Detective Jackson, who told her it was risky to meet the man. When Carolyn insisted, Jackson said police would go with her for protection. From a distance, officers kept an eye on Carolyn as she waited at the convenience store for the unknown caller. She had no way of knowing if the man knew who she was, and no way to identify him. Her only hope was if he would approach her. She studied everyone who came in and out, and everyone who used the phone. Carolyn waited over 2 hours. The caller never came forward. 2 days later, Pasadena, Texas police received the phone records for both calls to Regina's parents. They learned that the call to Regina's father in Houston was made from a gas station in Ennis, Texas, 200 miles northwest of where she was last seen. The call to her mother's home in Pasadena, Texas, was made from a payphone only a few blocks away.
At that particular time, it was obvious that we were becoming very concerned about Regina's whereabouts with the phone calls and the information that we received. We were pretty sure that there was going to be foul play involved.
2 weeks later, Carolyn told Detective Jackson that the man who had called her before wanted to set up another meeting at the same convenience store. Police traced the call to a nearby payphone. The caller had already fled. On April 23rd, police found a partial skeleton of a small female near a riverbank in Pasadena, Texas. They determined the young girl's age and weight was close to Regina's. Detective Suzanne Jackson brought Regina's dental records to the medical examiner.
I went to the ME's office with my information. We did a comparison on some dental x-rays and found that this particular person was not Regina.
Months went by with no leads. Regina's parents feared the worst. On October 12th, 2 boys were playing near a dirt road in Manville, Texas, 26 miles south of Houston. Close to the road, they came across a wood pile. They found something they'd never forget. Human remains. They ran home to tell their parents, who called police. Officers arrived and secured the area. They could not identify the body at the site. It was too badly decomposed, and there was no wallet or identification nearby. All police could guess was that the victim was a child or young adult. They hoped an autopsy would tell them more. The Pasadena, Texas detective traveled to the Harris County Medical Examiner's office, bringing Regina's dental records.
So you almost have a match right
The
there,
ME
but-
compared those records to x-rays taken of the corpse.
But then you get everything you can tell us.
They did not match.
It was a little disappointing, although we were very relieved that it was not Regina. Her parents at this particular point were concerned that we were going to be recovering a body and we were not going to be locating Regina alive, and they were ready for some type of closure at this point.
As the search continued in Texas through the fall of 1990, a farmer prepared to burn down his old barn in Bond County, Illinois. He hadn't been inside in years. The farmer climbed up into the hayloft to make one last check of the place. He looked through the abandoned building, but found only items long since discarded. Nothing seemed especially unusual or out of place. Then, something caught his eye. He looked closer at the strewn hay and saw a skeleton that appeared to be human. The farmer immediately called police. In October of 1990, as Detective Jackson hunted in Texas for 14-year-old Regina K. Walters, a decayed body was found in the hayloft of an abandoned barn in Bond County, Illinois. Agent Mike Sheely of the Illinois State Police responded to the scene.
I had received a call from the local sheriff's office in Bond County, Illinois, and they had instructed me that they had found a body in a rural setting near the Interstate 70, which is a major interstate that travels through Bond County.
Crime scene technicians conducted a thorough search of the barn. No clothes were found on or near the body. There was no wallet or other ID. They did find a single white thread close to the bones that seemed too new to have been in the old barn for long. Police photographed the remains from various angles. They found baling wire that matched the wire wrapped around the corpse's neck. Some hair remained on the head. Because the skull was so small, police believed the victim was probably a child. The people of nearby Greenville had not seen a murder in 10 years. The anonymity of this crime was especially disturbing. Police had no way of knowing if the victim was from the area or just dumped there by someone passing through on nearby Interstate 70. At first, they weren't even sure of the corpse's age or sex. Forensic anthropologist Mark Johnsey was called in to conduct an examination. He made several discoveries that helped Illinois State Agent Mike Sheely begin to identify the victim.
Mark was able to determine that it was a young female between the ages of 14 to 16, her approximate weight, which was 90 to 110 pounds. There was indication that her hair had been cut. The distal ends had begun to grow again, but the forensics had told us that it was recent.
The cause of death was determined to be strangulation. The killer had almost severed the victim's head by twisting baling wire around her neck 16 times.
That's what we found.
From the condition of the joints and vertebrae, Johnsey discerned that the girl was killed almost a year before. A forensic scientist analyzed the white fiber found close to the body. Maybe it would yield a clue to what the young girl or her murderer had been wearing. He determined the fiber was mostly cotton, but it didn't come from clothing. It likely came from a towel. Searching the National Crime Database, State Agent Mike Sheely listed the Illinois Jane Doe as a white female, 14 to 16 years of age, probably killed as early as September 1989.
We were alarmed to find that there was 950 matches with the age group and the category and the time frame, which made the task very difficult to begin the identification process.
He narrowed the field to about 100 by specifying the victim's time of death closer to the spring of 1990. The investigator then sent teletypes to law enforcement agencies working those cases. The detective investigating the disappearance of Regina Walters in Pasadena, Texas, received the teletype on October 16th. She believed the body's description fit Regina's and phoned the Bond County Sheriff's Office in Illinois. The receptionist told her they had gotten so many responses that the sheriff would have to call her back. Before she hung up, the detective remembered the mysterious phone call Regina's father had received. The caller had said the girl was in a barn.
When I asked her if the body was found in a barn, she immediately transferred me to the sheriff, in which I started talking to him right away. And it was immediately discovered that it was possibly Regina, and so we immediately jumped on that and started sending the teletypes back and forth.
The detective asked another question based on the March 17th phone call to Regina's father. Did the girl in the barn have shorn hair? The Illinois authorities confirmed that she did. The girl found in Illinois matched the caller's description of Regina.
We sent a copy of dental x-rays to Greenville, Illinois, to the sheriff's office, and those dental x-rays were matched with the body that was discovered there, and it was confirmed to be Regina's body.
One question remained. Where was Regina's boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones? Detectives called on the FBI for help. Special Agent Mark Young, a behavioral expert in the Houston field office, was assigned as case agent.
And I tried to go in and contact every person that had any involvement with Ricky or Regina. I wanted to see if there was anything that they mentioned that would have proven valuable to locating Ricky.
At his former high school, Pasadena, Texas detectives also continued to pursue Ricky Lee Jones.
That's right, you did. When you called, just a second, please.
A guidance counselor said that Jones had not been enrolled in school for the past year.
He was in school last. Okay, do you have any information I need?
She had little other information about him, though she did provide his last known address.
Pretty old.
It was the home of Jones's family. His sister Tammy was the only one there. She said that no one in the family had seen Ricky for over a year.
A year? You haven't seen him in a year?
They had written him off as a bad kid, believing he'd end up in prison.
A year? Yeah.
The detective asked if they had relatives in Mexico. Tammy said her mother had some in Matamoros, just south of the Texas border.
Have you seen her?
Jackson showed her a photo of Regina, but Tammy didn't recognize her.
Okay, that's the last time. Has he left?
Ricky was already listed as wanted because he had violated his probation. So we felt like maybe he was afraid to come home if he did know anything about Regina's disappearance and her death. We were in fear that he may not want to call and tell us what had happened or may be involved himself.
As Special Agent Mark Young pored over the details of the case, he developed a profile of Regina's killer. The agent determined that 18-year-old Ricky Lee Jones probably did not commit the crime.
If Ricky Lee Jones had murdered Regina, he would have done it in a fit of anger, and that would have been reflected in the crime scene, and you didn't see that. It was a very controlled, purposeful crime scene. You got the impression that this is an older person, a white male, a traveler, truck driver, traveling salesman, somebody that had a reason to be across the country.
The fact that the barn was close to an interstate supported Agent Young's theory. The crime scene told the agent more about the sadistic murderer. He had stripped off Regina's clothing, killed her slowly by strangulation, and most notably, had cut Regina's long hair.
Whoever did this crime was doing things beyond what was necessary to perpetrate the crime. Maybe a sexual predator or sexual sadist, a person that had other offenses also.
Investigators were alerted to another crime in the town of Marshall, Texas, 200 miles north of Houston. Partial skeletal remains of a young man were found, washed up on a creek bank. The skull had been perforated on the left side by a small caliber firearm. Though there was little evidence to positively identify the body, the victim's age and location led police to conclude it was probably Ricky Lee Jones.
I came to the conclusion that there were no other leads to cover in this case. For all intents and purposes, the case was closed in our division. We had nowhere else to go.
To investigators, it looked like the man who had killed Regina K. Walters and her boyfriend had gotten away with murder. As the hunt for a sadistic killer ground to a halt in Pasadena, Texas, 1,000 miles west in Arizona, authorities encountered a problem on their own highways. An Arizona highway patrolman was at the end of his shift when he came across a tractor-trailer parked on the side of an interstate on-ramp. The rig had to be moved. It was a hazard to passing motorists. He noticed the lights were on and the engine was still running. As he approached the driver's door, Officer Michael Miller recalled that a man suddenly burst out of the cab and immediately spread his arms against the truck.
And I asked him, I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing, officer, we're doing just fine." He said, "There's no problem. I've got a gun in my back pocket." And he motioned to his back pocket and then put his hands up on the side of his truck. This was kind of an unusual situation. And I could still hear the woman screaming on the inside of the truck.
Miller cuffed Robert Ben Rhodes and escorted the trucker back to his car to question him further.
He said it was just fine. They were there together in a, I guess you would call it, consenting situation. And, but I didn't know if the screams coming from the woman were the fact that she was startled, she was surprised, but I was going to find out what the situation was.
With Rhodes's hands cuffed behind his back, Miller seatbelted him into the patrol car. The officer returned to the truck to check on the frantic woman. He found her handcuffed to the walls by her wrists and ankles. The patrolman assured her she was no longer in danger.
I told her, "Ma'am, you're going to need to remain here until I can get some help out here, because this is a criminal or a crime scene, and some detectives are going to have to look at this." I said, "Just remain calm. This man is not going to be back to bother you again. Just remain calm." I left the truck and moved back to my patrol car.
Miller returned just in time. Rhodes had maneuvered his cuffed hands in front of him and released his seatbelt. He was about to open the car door. The officer quickly recuffed him.
There is no actual routine stop out there in the road that no matter what you come across out there, you never know who you're dealing with. And it kind of sent a chill up my spine to know that if this man, as cool as he was, could have probably killed me and the girl at the same time and still been on the road.
Police from the town of Casa Grande arrived on the scene. They freed the woman and transported her and Rhodes to the police station for further questioning. Inside the truck, they found a gruesome array of torture tools. Chains that attached to rings welded to the back of the sleeper compartment, fishhooks, bloody towels, a horse bit, and a briefcase filled with the implements of a sexual sadist. They also found a camera in the briefcase, along with several hairs that did not belong to the woman found in the truck. Casa Grande Police Detective Rick Barnhart led the investigation.
Robert Rhodes had what I refer to as a rape kit in his truck. He had all kinds of paraphernalia. He had long sticks with clips on the end where he would draw and quarter his victims. He had whips. And just based on that, I knew Robert Rhodes was a predator.
Just north of Phoenix, the truck stopped.
The woman found chained in Rhodes's truck was 27-year-old Kathleen Vine.
I've never had any problems before.
She told the detective she had been picked up about an hour earlier from the Rip Griffin's truck stop north of Phoenix.
He was trying to rape.
When she dozed off in the sleeper compartment, the trucker climbed back, assaulted her, and chained her to the walls. The man told her his name was Whips and Chains, and that he'd been doing this for 15 years. Police photographed her injuries, wrist burns from the handcuffs, and welts from the beatings. She tried to fight off her attacker, but her hands were chained. All she could do to defend herself was to bite him. She managed to injure his left shoulder enough to distract him from raping her. Kathleen agreed to press assault and kidnapping charges, but Detective Barnhart believed she might be problematic for the prosecution.
My interview with Kathleen was really sort of bizarre. She would talk about this reality, this terrible assault that she endured, and then periodically she would revert back to a story about her traveling across the country to see the president. She told me she wanted to give the president a microchip, and she talked about the underground prison where no one escapes from. And all this time my heart was sinking because I needed Kathleen to tell a very lucid story about the horrible incident that happened to her.
The detective asked trucker Robert Ben Rhodes for his version of events. Rhodes said Kathleen was crazy and described her as a lot lizard, the trucker's term for a woman who trades sex for rides. He claimed that she solicited him and that she liked it rough, though they never actually had sex. He refused to provide any details about what happened in the truck's sleeper compartment. He talked around the subject, never admitting to any crime.
Can you please remove your...
Police photographed Rhodes's wound. It looked like a bite mark on his left shoulder, just as Kathleen had described. Rhodes claimed he sustained the injury while loading his truck, but Detective Barnhart believed Kathleen's story.
She told me she tried to bite his throat, but he moved and she bit him on the left upper shoulder. And we've got a photo of her bite mark, and her story completely corroborated, what happened in that sleeper cab.
Local prosecutors arrested Robert Ben Rhodes and held him for aggravated assault, sexual assault, and unlawful imprisonment. But their only witness, Kathleen Vine, suffered from paranoid delusions. To keep him behind bars, they needed additional witnesses. Kathleen's claim that Rhodes had been kidnapping women for 15 years haunted Detective Barnhart. He entered Rhodes's name into the NCIC in case other agencies had reported similar crimes. As the detective pursued the case, it made headlines across the Southwest. A Houston police officer was among those who read about it. The trucker detained in Arizona sounded like the same man who was stopped outside of Houston earlier in the year. Police suspected Rhodes had held a woman captive in his truck for 6 days, raping and torturing her until she finally escaped. They were unable to press charges since the woman failed to identify him. Houston Police Sergeant Bomar described the case to Detective Barnhart.
I was contacted by Sergeant Bomar. His was the case where the young lady escaped. I was fairly positive that Robert Rhodes was at least a serial rapist. I had suspicions that he might be a murderer.
Since Rhodes had crossed state lines since his last crime, Detective Barnhart contacted the FBI to request assistance. He hoped that with the FBI's support, he could gather enough evidence of the trucker's serial sex crimes to build a case that would stick. Special Agent Bob Lee of the Houston FBI field office knew the place to start was in Rhodes's Houston apartment. He spoke to Rhodes's landlord. She had checked the apartment after the trucker's arrest and was horrified to find bloodied torture devices. Based on her statement, Agent Lee secured a warrant to search the premises.
We know that serial rapists often keep souvenirs from their victims, whether it be a piece of clothing or a piece of jewelry or whatever. When we went in, we found bondage paraphernalia, we found chains, we found handcuffs, we found a rack that someone could be tied to. We found a lot of women's jewelry.
Agents and Houston police also found bloody white towels, women's clothing, and stacks of photographs. The snapshots depicted some women with shorn hair in various states of undress, bound and bruised. Investigators believe that Rhodes shot the photos as souvenirs of his crimes to relive his victims' terror. Though agents now had evidence that Rhodes was likely a serial rapist, they were unable to identify any of his victims from the photos. With no additional witnesses, the case in Arizona was still weak. Prosecutors' only witness, Kathleen Vine, was questionable. A trial would be a contest of he said, she said, and a mentally disturbed woman might leave jurors unconvinced. By December 1990, the best Arizona prosecutors could do was to offer Rhodes a deal. 6 years, including time served and work release eligibility, if he pled guilty to the charges against Vine. His attorney accepted. In about a year, Rhodes could be out on parole, stalking new prey. By October 1991, a year after 14-year-old Regina K. Walters was found murdered in Illinois, her case remained unsolved. Special Agent Mark Young, an FBI profiler, predicted the murderer was probably a trucker or traveling salesman with prior sexual offenses. His signature behavior was to hack off his victim's hair. Agent Young spoke to area law enforcement agencies hoping they had open cases that might match the profile.
One day, Bob Lee, who was an agent in the FBI on the Violent Crime Squad, overheard me talking on the phone to a police officer. And he said, hey, I had a case I had worked a few months back where a truck driver kidnapped a young girl and her head hair was cut just like you're saying.
The victim's name was Nicole Tuttle. She had also been raped repeatedly and had escaped the day Regina Walters and Ricky Lee Jones were last seen alive, on Monday, February 5th, 1990. That same day, Houston police had stopped a trucker named Robert Ben Rhodes, who fit Nicole's description of her attacker. At the time, she told the officers it was the wrong man. Special Agent Bob Lee from the FBI's Houston field office recalled that Nicole later changed her story in the hospital where she was treated for her wounds.
Later that night, she told the detectives that Robert Ben Rhodes was, in fact, the individual that had kidnapped her. When asked if she wanted to press charges, she told the police officer that all she wanted to do was go home.
Lee also told Agent Young that Nicole was not the trucker's only victim. Rhodes was serving time in an Arizona prison for the assault of Kathleen Vine and was eligible for work release in just 3 months. The agent then described the search of the trucker's residence.
And he said, we found some photographs in his apartment, some of his own pictures, with somebody else with short hair, who it seems like she was at a barn.
The chilling photos portrayed a young girl at different locations, wearing a variety of seductive outfits. At the barn, she was in a black dress, shielding herself from Rhodes's camera.
When I saw those photos, I said, this is Regina Walters. In order to verify that, I went to the family and I got several of their pictures, and there are facial characteristics and markings that exactly duplicated the pictures Rhodes took.
The FBI began to build a kidnapping and murder case against Robert Ben Rhodes. They revisited the evidence from the search of Rhodes's apartment and found more photos of Regina. They also found several articles of women's clothing, including a black dress, which lab examiners confirmed was the dress Regina had worn in the photos. Illinois State Agent Mike Sheely was notified. He forwarded the evidence found in the Greenville barn to the FBI lab in Houston. Lab examiners discovered that the cotton fiber recovered in Illinois was consistent with the bloody towels found in Rhodes's Houston apartment, but the results were inconclusive since that type of towel was so common. Detective Jackson from Pasadena, Texas, met with agents Sheely, Young, and Lee at the Houston FBI field office to discuss what they needed for a solid indictment against Rhodes, not only for Regina's murder, but for crimes against his other nameless victims. With Rhodes nearing his release date, Illinois State Agent Mike Sheely knew they were racing against the clock.
He was eligible for parole, and that he was actually eligible to work outside the prison almost on a release system. And so we were under pressure to have the indictments and to get him arrested on our charges.
You have a seat here.
Agents interviewed Rhodes's former Houston employer, Mike Eggleton. The trucking firm owner was not surprised to see him. Eggleton had been questioned by authorities about Rhodes before. A few years back, local police suspected the trucker of assaulting a woman in the back of his rig, but no formal charges were ever filed. The truck Rhodes had driven had been sold, but Eggleton provided its vehicle identification number, as well as Rhodes's trucking logs and fuel receipts. While agents waited for a trace to come back on the truck's ID number, the team began to assemble a timeline of the trucker's travels. Agents found fuel receipts from a gas station in Ennis, Texas, dated March 17, 1990, the same place and date as the call made to Regina's father, Jerry Walters.
Oklahoma City.
Several of the local calls to Regina's mother, Carolyn, also coincided with Rhodes's time in Houston. One question about the calls remained. The killer could easily have gotten Carolyn's number from missing persons flyers posted around town. But how had he gotten Jerry Walters' unlisted home number? Agent Young found the answer in evidence stored in Arizona.
It was in that evidence that we located Regina Walters' little spiral notebook. And the front cover was all of her personal information, her mother's address and phone number, and her father's.
When Young flipped the notebook over, he found something even more disturbing. A message that he believed was written by Rhodes himself. A knife and gun were drawn above a phrase that appeared to have blood dripping off its letters. The phrase read, "Ricky's a dead man." Only a DNA test would confirm if the partial remains of the young man found in southeast Texas was Ricky Lee Jones. Unfortunately, investigators lacked a known source of Jones's DNA to perform a comparison.
And everywhere else.
Since Rhodes claimed to have been abducting and torturing his victims for the past 15 years, the team submitted their timeline to VICAP, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, an FBI database that lists thousands of solved and unsolved crimes nationwide. Despite the limited information and gaps in the timeline, Detective Jackson was not surprised when the system returned over 50 possible matches with open homicide and missing persons cases.
His trips from Houston to Baltimore to LA and back in a matter of 4 to 5 days at a time could just give you an idea of how many people he has access to and remote locations that he could abuse these people and dispose of them.
A week later, agents tracked down Rhodes's truck in Houston. 2 years had passed since Rhodes had driven the rig. The cab had since been steam cleaned, repainted, and used by other drivers. But evidence of his crimes somehow survived. Investigators recovered a single strand of head hair that was consistent with Regina's. Miraculously, they also found a small fingerprint on the vinyl upholstery in the sleeper compartment that matched her prints. That proved she had been in the truck, but it did not prove when or whether she'd been there against her will. By January of 1992, almost 2 years after Regina had disappeared, investigators determined the evidence was not decisive enough to prove interstate kidnapping. They dropped the federal case. With Rhodes's parole hearing just a week away, investigators convinced the Bond County prosecutor to press charges in Illinois for capital murder. They knew the evidence was circumstantial, but they pressed on.
I feared that he could escape, and I also believe that due to the overcrowding in the prison systems and those sort of things, that he could be released.
On February 6th, investigators traveled to the Arizona State Prison in Florence to serve the warrant to Rhodes. Their plan was to confront Rhodes with photos of Regina, hoping to prompt a confession. An incriminating statement would bolster their case. The suspected serial killer was unfazed, even smug.
We spent approximately an hour with him, but Rhodes was unwilling to speak with us and denied any involvement in the death, and was very firm in his denials. And at that point, we knew that we were going to have to prove our case.
Agents believed Rhodes knew they were fishing for a confession because their evidence was weak. They suspected this arrogant man was betting he could beat the charges. Maybe he believed that they didn't care enough about his victims to earn a conviction.
A lot of serial offenders, whether they're killers or other sexual predators, will pick victims that they consider the forgotten people because they're banking on that element that law enforcement and society doesn't really care about hitchhikers or less wealthy people, less established folks. He preyed on that type of person in the hopes that he wouldn't get the attention that did happen.
Almost 2 years after the death of Regina K. Walters and the kidnapping and sexual assault of at least 2 other women, Robert Ben Rhodes was extradited from Arizona to stand trial in Illinois. He and his attorney managed to delay the trial date for 6 months. On September 11th, the overconfident trucker lost his nerve. In a Bond County, Illinois courthouse, his attorney pled down the capital murder charge that carried a possible death sentence. He accepted an offer of first-degree murder with a penalty of life. Rhodes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even as he serves his time in the maximum security prison in Chester, Illinois, investigators have not abandoned the case. They continue to gather evidence, committed to proving that Regina K. Walters was not Rhodes' only murder victim.
There is one other picture of a female as yet unidentified that got into the truck with him. We're somewhat concerned whether that may be another victim. Anybody that gets into the comfort zone of the truck of a serial killer may potentially be another murder victim.
Investigators continue to work on identifying the unknown women from Rhodes's past in hopes of bringing the small comfort of closure to their grieving families. She came to rest on a snowbank at the side of a highway. A teenage girl who could have been anyone's daughter. Her journey had taken her places no young girl should ever know. But finally, it had brought her home, to a small Pennsylvania town she'd never seen before. If only she'd survived, she would finally have known there were people who cared.
She appeared on the highway in the spring, a young woman, her life cut short, her past and her identity a mystery. Only by finding out who she was could we ever hope to find her killer. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The highway gave the killer a quick and easy escape route, but the trail the FBI used to pursue him was twisted and long. We hoped it wouldn't be a dead end.
March 24th, 1993, Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. A late snowstorm had held spring at arm's length. On his way to work, a motorist drove down a quiet, snow-lined roadway. But something on the roadside caught his attention. What he saw was unthinkable in this peaceful valley. Pennsylvania State Police were immediately called in. A young woman lay dead on a snowbank near the junction of two major interstates.
What do we got here?
The county coroner determined the girl had died before she was dumped there. She was wearing only socks, panties, and a sweater. And she was young, high school or college age. But perhaps most disturbing, there was a rope knotted around her neck. And her hands were also bound. District Attorney Ray Griecar was at the scene, appalled by what he saw.
What struck me is that someone had not only murdered this young woman, but treated her with such disrespect. The way her body was found haphazardly askew on this pile of snow suggested that she had been just thrown out as if she were nothing more than a piece of refuse along the side of the road. And it's something that makes you angry when you see it.
Her body was taken away for an autopsy. Soon word of the crime began to spread in this close-knit town of 7,000. It was the first homicide in Bellefonte in 13 years. Like District Attorney Griecar, the townspeople were shocked and outraged. FBI Special Agent Randy Kohik was among them. He was drawn to the case well before the FBI was officially involved.
That whole area up there is known as Happy Valley. It's a nice place to raise your kids. I lived there for 12 years. Crimes like this just don't happen there. And needless to say, to have a young girl's body dumped in your community is a heinous thing. They were extremely upset, and even more so, they wondered whether or not perhaps the murderer might live in the community.
Detectives searched for anything that might help identify the girl. They found no purse or wallet, and little else.
And I remember commenting to Trooper Madden that morning that he would be very, very fortunate indeed if he was ever able to even identify this young woman, let alone figure out who murdered her.
Trooper Madden of the Pennsylvania State Police would be lead investigator.
There was a slight indentation into the snow, about 6 inches, where the body itself looked like it had been dumped off of some type of object, be it a truck or vehicle, into the berm of the snow.
Madden surmised the vehicle had been a truck with a cab fairly high off the ground. Tire tracks nearby would prove him right. They were made by dual wheels, probably the rear wheels of a tractor-trailer cab. An evidence technician made plaster casts of the tracks to be sent to the Pennsylvania State Police lab. Examiners there would attempt to identify the brand and check for anything unusual about them. Then, if a suspect were found and his tires matched the tracks, the casts could help link him to the scene of the crime. Troopers fanned out to find clues. They searched both nearby fields and local Penn State University, but found nothing useful. The body was taken to Lehigh Hospital in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. There, coroner Dr. Mahalakis would perform the autopsy, as Trooper Madden observed. The doctor determined the cause of death to be strangulation. There were no gunshot or stab wounds. The body's core temperature revealed the young woman had been dead less than 12 hours when her body was discovered. It seemed she had died some time before she was dumped on the roadside, as the coroner at the scene had guessed. Other tests indicated she had had sex before she died.
Whether she was raped or had consensual sex at the time was not known. However, based on the circumstances, we believed at the time that a rape may have occurred.
Dr. Mahalakis carefully removed the rope from around the girl's neck.
Wait a minute, right here, Doc. There's a piece of hair, this black hair.
Under the knot was a single dark hair. It didn't belong to this blonde girl. But was it the killer's? The hair would be sent to the FBI forensics lab in Washington, D.C., along with the knots for analysis. The type of knots could be important. They might help the FBI develop a profile of the killer. But the best clue came from the girl's left hand. There appeared to be something written on the palm.
She had some faint numbers written on the palm of her left hand. They had been written on possibly in ink, and they'd been on there for some time as they had faded, and they were barely legible. It was thought by both Bill and myself that possibly this could be the lead we were looking for that could possibly lead us to her identity.
Numbers,
the writing was
letters.
indecipherable, though it looked like it might be numbers.
That's pretty faint. Can you get that?
Agent Kohig suggested experts at the FBI lab could make them clear enough to read.
It was thought that perhaps we could have these enhanced by the FBI lab in Washington, D.C., so the skin was removed from her left hand and it was forwarded to the FBI lab.
The girl's fingerprints would be run through a national database of missing persons. But the results would prove disheartening.
Checks were made with her fingerprints through the APHIS system, which is a national system of checking fingerprints. They came back negative. Checks were also made using descriptors of the body and characteristics of the body, and that also came back negative. So we had no record of a person missing that matched this person we discovered.
Then, x-rays were taken by a forensic dentist. They could be crucial in identifying the woman. If a tentative ID were made and these x-rays matched those taken when the woman was alive, they'd confirm her identity. But first, she'd need to be visually identified by someone who knew her in life, which would be difficult after a full autopsy. Closing facial incisions made for the dental x-rays and masking contusions would take hours of painstaking work. To restore her to the way she looked in life would require the artistry of a skilled mortician. Stephen Mondock was just the man for the job.
When we received her body, she had been through quite an ordeal. You know, we had to put a little bit of makeup on her. We had to get her hair done. We dressed her. We made her look as lifelike as possible at that point. We then proceeded to take photographs that were eventually placed in the newspaper.
Those photographs depicted her as more lifelike than she had looked when first found. But Mondock gave her more than a face. He gave her a name.
When the coroner brought her in, he said, "We have a Jane Doe for you." And I said, "Carrie," I said, "you know, I don't like calling people Jane Doe." I said, "It seems so impersonal." He says, "Well, what are we going to call her?" And I said, "Well, she was found in Spring Township, right?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Why don't we call her Spring?" And I said, "Well, she was found in the dawn of the morning, so why don't we call her Spring Dawn?"
Mondock's caring work gave investigators exactly what they needed. They showed photos of the girl to dozens of truckers at local truck stops, restaurants, and gas stations. Some offered the names of people the girl resembled. Her young face struck a chord of recognition in many who saw it. Notices in local papers and on flyers also generated leads.
The outpouring of calls to the state police at the time was plentiful, and we had to sift through every lead to try to determine if this person was a local person.
But none of the leads would pan out. Then, in late April, about a month after the body was found, the FBI lab called Trooper Madden. Their analysis showed the writing on the girl's left palm was a phone number with a Florida area code. Madden found the number had been disconnected, and he began to wonder if the area code itself was wrong.
But it didn't seem right. It didn't seem to fit this particular case. In looking at this person, there was no tan. It seemed as if she came from a winterized area, somewhat similar to where we were. However, we did not know where.
Madden's best guess was that she came from west or north of Pennsylvania, probably within a 12-hour drive from where the body was found. Madden also realized that there were 2 phone numbers written on the girl's hand, not just one. So he noted all the cities within the 12-hour radius that had both the exchanges she'd written down. Madden and Kohik would send the numbers along with photos and descriptions of the young woman to sheriffs and state police in those areas. Perhaps the information would trigger some leads. As they worked the case, the people of Bellefonte followed each new development, offering help and support.
There was a genuine showing of affection for this person and concern. I guess you could say she was posthumously adopted by the community of Bellefonte. And even though we were very quickly able to ascertain that she was not a local resident, there was still a very strong sense of she is someone that we cared about.
As spring bloomed for Bellefonte, the girl remained in people's thoughts. Her story touched everyone, especially Madden and Kohik. These colleagues and longtime friends could not stop thinking about her tragic death and trying to solve the case even after hours.
You can't let the town down.
At the time I was assigned to this case, I had a 17-year-old daughter, and Detective Madden had 2 teenage daughters. So I think for the both of us, we took a very strong personal interest in the case. As a matter of fact, it pretty much took up all of our time during our working hours, and we would often find ourselves talking to each other at night on the phone at our residences.
Never was community support so strong as when Stephen Mondock began to prepare the body for burial.
I had florists call donating flowers. I had hairdressers calling to do her hair. I had people donating clothing. I had ministers willing to give their services, the vault company, the casket companies. The cemetery where she was to be buried was actually at the bottom of a beautiful mountain where there's wildflowers growing. We had the monument company had was willing to donate a stone to bury her. It was just amazing how much the town all came together in an effort to bury her.
More than a month after the body was found, it was time for a burial. Not only did the town want to bring closure to the tragedy, the body could not be preserved much longer. Still, Madden needed just a little more time.
The last thing that we wanted to do as a police agency was to lose the body. In other words, we did not want the body buried at that point in time without identification.
Just when the body could be kept no longer, a break in the case finally came. A sheriff's office in Maine received Madden's information packet on the girl.
See what you think.
Though he didn't recognize her face, he called one of the numbers written on the girl's hand. He had no idea who might answer the phone.
Yes, hello, this is Sheriff.
He reached Mark Rosenberg, a guidance counselor at a local school. Promising, given the girl's age.
I'm Detective Staples. Thanks so much for meeting with me tonight.
A detective visited Rosenberg and his wife at their home.
I'd like to see if you can help me identify the woman in this.
When the detective showed the Rosenbergs a photo of the girl, they immediately recognized her.
Can you look at that for me, please?
And when they spoke her name, it was eerily familiar. Dawn Marie Birnbaum. Steve Mondock's choice of the name Spring Dawn had been uncannily accurate.
And I was shocked. I was amazed. It was just a strange coincidence. But it felt right. She was part of our community.
Mark Rosenberg was one of the last people Dawn talked to before she died. Investigators hoped he could lead them closer to her killer. After a search that stretched from Florida to Maine, investigators had learned the identity of a teenage girl found dead near a rural Pennsylvania interstate. As they spoke to Mark Rosenberg, a guidance counselor at the school she had attended, he said she'd called him just days before she died, from a payphone. He'd tried to help her, but it was already too late. The school she attended was mainly for at-risk teens, like Dawn herself. She'd had problems with authority figures ever since her parents' divorce. In Indiana, where her mother lived, she'd been through a dozen foster homes and run away almost as many times. But at this boarding school, she'd finally found someone she could trust, her counselor, Mr. Rosenberg.
As Mr. Rosenberg was talking to Dawn, the operator was interrupting, telling her to put more money in. Time was running out, and Mr. Rosenberg told Dawn to call him again so he would know she was safe. She said she would do that. He gave her his home telephone number, which obviously she then wrote on the palm of her hand. She said she'd call back, but in fact, she never did call again.
The school would send Dawn's dental records to Pennsylvania, where forensic dentists would match them to x-rays taken at the morgue. The result would be a positive ID and a turning point in the case.
The FBI entered the case officially under our kidnapping statute. Obviously, we had a girl who was found in central Pennsylvania laying in a snow pile, tied up, and who had previously been seen just a few days earlier in the state of Maine. So we have the interstate aspect.
Now, we are aware that
the investigation focused in Maine, where Dawn was last seen alive. Maine state police officers interviewed Dawn's friends, including Heidi Hansen. Heidi told them Dawn had been planning to hitch a ride with a truck driver, as she'd done about a year before. On that occasion, Dawn and another friend, Mandy Gray, had run off with a trucker named John Hoffpower. They dropped off Mandy at her home in Georgia, then continued on. What had started as a ride became a relationship. As the weeks passed, they grew closer.
And the woman of my life, Dawn. She's been waiting weeks to see you.
Hoffpower took Don home to meet his grandmother. They continued to travel together, driving his routes. No one knew exactly where they'd gone or what they'd done, but Dawn spoke fondly of her time with Hoffpower. They'd enjoyed each other's company, and he had treated her well. It seemed one of the few happy times in her troubled life. Then, about a month after Dawn was last seen, the truck was pulled over by police in a random traffic stop. An officer demanded Dawn get out. She complied. When she gave him her license, it triggered a missing persons bulletin filed by her school. The officer told Dawn she'd have to come with him. When he tried to take her away from Hoffpower, she pleaded to stay, to no avail. Police would bring her back to school. Since then, her behavior had been good, and she was due to graduate in just a few months. But things were not as they seemed. Apparently, Hoffpower was still in love with her, and maybe she with him. Though she hadn't seen him since their trip, he had tried to visit her at school.
Listen, I'm sorry, you can't get in here.
But security guards had kept him from entering the grounds.
You got no clearance to come in here.
Not having heard from him in a while, Dawn now told friends she was going to look for Hoffpower and run away with him again.
Was brought back,
On the evening of Sunday, March 21st, 3 days before Dawn was found dead, she had snuck off from a movie theater. She told her friend Heidi she would hitchhike to the Dysart truck stop in Bangor, Maine, hoping to meet Hoffpower.
Get 2 agents down there ASAP and get me all the information.
Hoffpower now became a prime suspect, since Dawn was last seen headed to meet him. Agent Kohick attempted to track him down. Apparently, he lived in Mississippi. But Hoffpower proved elusive. The closest relative agents found was his grandmother, who lived in Emory, Mississippi. She welcomed them inside and told them she'd raised Hoffpower as her own son. He was devoted to her. No matter where he was, he called her almost every day. He had even brought Dawn home to meet her. Now, when agents told the woman of Dawn's violent death, she was devastated. Then, she shared with them her own tragic news. Last September, a half year before Dawn's murder, her grandson had stopped calling her. He'd also stopped working and taking care of his pets. He'd left his wallet in his house and disappeared. His grandmother believed he was dead, though his body was never found.
His car was found riddled with bullets, and there was some reason to think that he had gotten into some trouble with some very unsavory characters and had met a violent end.
Agents learned his car had been found in September 1992, a few miles from his Mississippi home, 7 months prior to Dawn's death. By a strange twist of fate, Hoffpower's disappearance had led to Dawn's death. If Hoffpower had arrived at Dysart's, Dawn would still be alive. Their star-crossed love affair had ended in a double tragedy. Now, with Hoffpower presumed dead, investigators' struggle to find Dawn's killer was almost back to square one. Investigators' most promising lead had gone cold. They again had no suspect in a chilling case. The death of a beautiful 17-year-old girl left dead on a rural Pennsylvania roadside. On a tip from Dawn's friend, Agent Cohick and Trooper Madden went to the Dysart truck stop in Bangor, Maine, where Dawn had said she was headed when she was last seen.
Cohick from the FBI. How are you? I'm Detective Madden. I wonder if we could ask a few questions.
They showed Dawn's photograph to the cashier, who remembered seeing her on the telephone a few weeks earlier.
She was over there.
Surprisingly enough, even though 2 months had elapsed, agents discovered that people recalled seeing the young blonde girl there standing at the doorway asking truckers for rides as they walked through. She was recalled by several people at the truck stop. And I guess when you know, you're a young teenage girl and you're out on the road like that, people take notice.
It seemed obvious. This was where Dawn had made her last phone calls.
This cashier's desk, where a trucker would pay for fuel, was only about 15 feet from the bank of pay telephones which Dawn had used to make calls back home and down to the school. So it was easy to visualize how an encounter would have occurred between Dawn and a trucker.
Agent Cohick secured a federal grand jury subpoena for the telephone records.
Got a problem? Yep, we have a lot of problems.
Going through them would be a painstaking task, but it was the most promising option in a case fast running out of leads.
Mandy, her girlfriend, right? Mandy Gray. Some of her other girlfriends?
The people Dawn had called might know where she had been going, or who she was going with.
You got it. ASAP.
The phone records confirmed Dawn's call to her guidance counselor, Mark Rosenberg, in Maine. They also revealed she'd phoned other friends. It seemed her last call was at 10 a.m. to Mandy Gray, the girl who'd traveled with Dawn and Hoffbauer. A state trooper visited Mandy at her home in Georgia. Mandy confirmed Dawn had called her from the Dysart's truck stop. Dawn said she'd gotten a ride to Dysart's from a friendly trucker who'd given her money for food when he'd dropped her off. Mandy said her friend had been disappointed that she hadn't found Hoffbauer there. She seemed to have no one else to turn to and nowhere to go. If she headed toward Indiana, where her mother lived, she feared authorities would be looking for her.
Based on the conversation she had had with her girlfriend in Georgia, Trooper Madden and I reasoned that she had obtained a ride with a truck driver from Dysart's truck stop. At that point, I decided it would be best if we attempted to identify who may have stopped there for gas over that several-day period. And so I had a federal grand jury subpoena issued for all the receipts from the truck stop for approximately a 4-day period surrounding when Dawn was last seen there.
Meanwhile, Trooper Madden obtained receipts for the 3 truck stops closest to where Dawn's body was found in Pennsylvania. They hoped that whoever had given Dawn a ride had bought gas in both places. It was possible. The distance from Bangor to Bellefonte is just over 650 miles, but not probable. A big rig can easily travel 1,500 miles or more on a single filling. Undoubtedly, it was a long shot, but Cohick and Madden nonetheless began the painstaking task of scanning thousands of gas receipts.
Over approximately the next 4 weeks, I compiled the receipts from Maine and from Pennsylvania and ended up with 2 separate lists. After comparing one list against the other, I noticed there was only one match on the entire list of several thousand names.
The name was James Robert Cruz, Jr. Cruz had bought gas on the morning of March 22nd at Dysart's truck stop, just as Dawn was talking on the telephone 15 feet away. 3 days later, he gassed up again in Milesburg, Pennsylvania, just a few hours before Dawn's body was found nearby.
So this was a big breakthrough for us. We have a guy who's in Bangor when Dawn is in Bangor, and in central Pennsylvania right about the time her body is found.
The receipts showed James Robert Cruz Jr. worked at an Ohio trucking company. In response to a call from Agent Cohick, his manager verified the credit card purchases.
Okay, I've got the records. And,
Cruz was driving truck 44 on a route consistent with the events of the crime.
Got the times, got the dates, got everything here.
Agent Cohick and Trooper Madden now had a suspect in the killing of 17-year-old Dawn Marie Birnbaum.
Okay, that sounds good to me too. Exactly.
Investigators pursued their prime suspect, wanted for the murder of a 17-year-old high school girl
Wednesday morning, then
whose
we'll go.
body was dumped
Sound
near a
good?
Pennsylvania interstate.
Mm-hmm.
The man was a trucker named James Robert Cruz Jr. His manager told the FBI he was a model employee at an
Exactly.
Ohio trucking company.
This is the file that we're
But
looking
investigators found he had a dark past.
for. Yeah, it turns
I
out.
had a criminal history check run in the next few minutes and was able to determine that he had a rather lengthy criminal record. Most importantly on that criminal record was the fact that he had been in the U.S. military, and while in the U.S. military, he had been convicted of attempted murder via strangulation and had served time in Fort Leavenworth for that conviction.
His military records gave investigators another key fact.
We found that his blood type was A positive, which fit him into the small portion of the population which would be a possible source of the seminal fluid found in Dawn.
It seemed investigators were closing in on their suspect.
There's only one thing left that we could do to further attempt to identify whether he might have been the individual responsible for this murder, and that was to make a determination as to what type of tires he had on his truck.
At Agent Cohick's request, an Ohio FBI agent inspected the tires on truck 44 while Cruz was on the road in another rig. The tires were XD1, Michelin, low profiles, a fairly unusual brand. At the Pennsylvania State Police Lab, an examiner attempted to match that brand to the tire cast made where Dawn's body was found. He compared the cast to detailed photographs in a tire reference guide. They matched. Another breakthrough in the case.
So we had a match on the tires, we had a match on the blood, we had the fuel slips. This, at this point, according to the United States Attorney's Office, was sufficient to put together a search warrant to search Jim's truck and to also perhaps take blood and hair samples from his body for DNA analysis.
When Cruz was again away in another rig, FBI evidence recovery technicians examined truck 44. But if Dawn had in fact been in this truck, it would have been at least 2 months ago, so investigators didn't expect to find much. The fact that the truck was exceptionally clean didn't make them any more optimistic.
The search took pretty much the entire day, and it was an exhaustive search. We were searching both the tractor and the trailer itself. There were over 300 pictures taken of the tractor trailer.
But nothing turned up. An evidence technician was about to declare the search complete when something caught the investigator's eye.
And I looked at the passenger door and noticed that at the bottom of the door there was a piece of carpeting. And upon closer examination of the carpeting, I noticed one single blonde head hair interwoven in the fibers of the carpet.
You see something?
It seemed amazing, but there it was,
Bill, come here.
as if Dawn had not been quite ready to give up yet.
What is it? It's like a blonde hair.
The hair would be sent to the FBI lab for analysis.
I thought it was a little bit too good to be true that this could be a hair from Dawn.
When do you expect them, Joe?
Now, investigators waited for Cruz to return from his run.
Mr. Cruz, James Cruz?
They told him they were looking for a runaway last seen at a truck stop in Bangor, Maine.
Do you mind if we use your office?
No, right there on it. Thanks, Joe.
They implied they were talking to many drivers.
Take a seat right here in the shed.
We know you had a long
They asked to see Cruz's logbook for his record of travels on the days in question. The logs are government mandated to keep truckers from driving too many hours at a
Gives kind of a
time.
history of where you've been.
Cruz admitted he'd falsified his logs.
Is it pretty accurate?
Well, you know, it's
Truckers commonly alter them to stay within legal limits.
pretty accurately where you've been.
But it seemed Cruz's logs had been selectively altered.
But the one thing we noticed was that the misrepresentations in the log seemed to occur just conveniently when the fuel was purchased in Pennsylvania, also when the fuel was purchased in Dyserts.
I'm sorry?
In response to questions, Cruz calmly described his route.
Yeah, pretty much.
But when asked if he fueled up between Bangor and Pennsylvania, he said he didn't have to. The 240 gallons his truck could carry was enough for the trip.
Is this your signature on this credit card statement?
I then suggested to him that I had a fuel slip indicating that he had in fact filled up his truck on Wednesday morning. He paused for a second and then advised that he did in fact recall doing that, and it was due to the fact that they gave free showers away at that particular truck stop in Mossburg. I asked him why he hadn't remembered it, and he said to me, well, I guess I just forgot.
Mr. Cruz, we have a, we can show a picture of
Then, they showed him a photo of Dawn.
We asked him if he had ever seen this girl before. At that point in time, he very calmly and casually stated no, he had never seen this girl, he didn't know her, nor had he ever met her before in his life.
They told him they had strong evidence linking him to the crime. Dawn's phone calls from Bangor that coincided with his stopover there.
You have any problem with that?
The match of his truck tires to the tire tracks at the scene. And the match of his blood type to the type found on the body. He calmly chalked it all up to coincidence.
I don't know how.
At no point during the interview did any of his mannerisms indicate that he was at all nervous with my line of questioning. And as the night slowly went on, I think even Detective Madden agreed that he became less of a suspect for us, even though we had all this circumstantial evidence. He was just too calm and cooperative.
Do you have any problem with that? Not at all.
Cruz remained friendly, even when investigators produced a warrant for blood and hair samples. They would later learn from FBI profilers that such an excessively calm response can be a sign of guilt. On September 6th, results of the blood and hair analysis proved them right. The samples from Cruz matched the hair and DNA the killer had left behind on Dawn's body. With that evidence in hand, agents obtained a federal arrest warrant for James Robert Cruz, Jr. The FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police had identified the man who had brutally raped and murdered a young woman. On September 8, 1993, with a federal arrest warrant, Agent Cohick and Trooper Madden arrested James Robert Cruz, Jr. when he returned from another trucking run. As they made the arrest, Cruz suddenly dropped his easygoing attitude.
One of the differences between the initial interview of Mr. Cruz and the arrest of Mr. Cruz was his demeanor.
I didn't do anything, man!
No longer was he the cool, calm, and collected person he had been during the initial interview that we had with him. Instead, Mr. Cruz appeared to be very sullen and was angry towards both Agent Cohick and myself.
Cruz's arrest was the reward for determined investigators committed to catching the killer of a girl who could have been anyone's daughter. Just 6 months earlier, investigators had only a body in the snow near an interstate with no ID. He was charged with first, second, and third-degree murder, rape, kidnapping, and the federal charge of unlawful flight to avoid prosecution.
But I'd like to take a few minutes.
For Dawn, the nightmare started as an adventure. On Sunday, March 21st, she left her friend Heidi at a movie theater near their school in Poland Springs, Maine. Dawn headed for Bangor, where she hoped to meet John Hoffman. A friendly trucker gave her a ride. She and John had been separated for months, and she looked forward to seeing him. But he wasn't there. She could not have known he was missing and presumed dead. Instead, her life would intersect with that of a much more sinister man, James Robert Cruz, Jr.
No, I'm okay. I'm fine.
Dawn spent the day of March 22nd making calls at the Dysart truck stop in
Look, I was
Bangor.
just calling to let you know I'm safe.
She telephoned friends, letting them know where she was and that she was safe.
Okay. We'll just tell everybody I'm okay. Oh, I appreciate that.
She also talked to her school counselor, Mark Rosenberg, to say she'd run away, but was fine and promised to call him that evening.
Okay. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on.
She wrote his numbers on her hand for safekeeping. When James Robert Cruz paid for his gas, he saw Dawn on the phone, just 15 feet from the cash register.
Okay. All right, well, we'll keep in touch, okay? All right. Bye.
Cruz signed the credit card receipt, billing the gas to his employer in Ohio.
Okay.
Cool up here.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hey, mister. Where are you headed? Do you think you might be stopping in Georgia? Can I get a ride?
Absolutely.
Is this it? Thanks.
It didn't take much to convince him to give her a ride. She and Cruz would head south. Prosecutors reconstructed the events that had led to Dawn Birnbaum's death. She had no idea of the danger that lay ahead. The hours she spent with James Robert Cruz would be her last. While Dawn prepared to sleep for the night, Cruz was still awake, falsifying his logbook. Dawn would soon find herself a helpless captive, trapped by a cruel predator, with no escape. Late on March 23rd, Cruz raped and strangled her, probably in the sleeping compartment of his truck.
That's what it was.
That same night, after buying gas in Pennsylvania, he disconnected his cab from his trailer at the travel port. He drove away, looking for a place to leave Dawn's body. Cruz drove through the backwoods of Pennsylvania, anxious to dump the lifeless girl. In the wee hours of March 24th, he pulled over to the side of the road. He pushed Dawn's body out of the truck and onto the side of a highway entrance ramp.
Chose not to.
Cruz almost certainly believed he'd never be caught.
That's what it was.
And if not for dedicated investigators, advanced forensics testing, and plain good luck, he might easily have gotten away with murder. District Attorney Ray Griecar served as prosecutor.
And one point that I wanted to emphasize to the jury was how long it took Dawn to die at the hands of James Cruz. The pathologist testified that from the moment the rope was knotted around her neck, it took 4 minutes for her to die.
Griecar's approach was effective. On June 14th, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury found James Robert Cruz, Jr. guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Cruz immediately to life in prison without parole. He is serving his time at the Greene County Maximum Security Prison in western Pennsylvania.
The legacy of this investigation, I would say, is the fact that at the beginning of the investigation, all we had was a young girl laying in a snow pile who had died a death no one should have to die. No identification on her for the most part, and a very strong concern among law enforcement agencies that she would not ever be identified, much less have the killer caught and convicted.
We have Cruz behind bars. We have to make
But it seemed Kohik and Madden may have performed an even greater service than they first realized.
Sequenced with what we've got.
At the time of the arrest, there was a lot of media interest in Cruz because in his own home state of Ohio, there had been a number of young women found along the highways and on-ramps over the previous year or two, and who had been tied up as well and left along on-ramps. A review of our VICAP database indicated over the previous 10 years there were approximately 600 young women that were found along the highways and who had died in a suspicious manner.
We were not able to conclusively state that Mr. Cruz was involved in any of these murders. What we do know is that after the arrest of Mr. Cruz, the murders that we were talking about in the state of Ohio ceased.
For Dawn Birnbaum, peace had finally come. The gentle people of Bellefonte will always remember her, and the killer who took her life and changed theirs forever.